Hey everyone, Mr. Russell here again. In this video, we will talk to you about how to solve for missing side lengths using trigonometry. So I'm going to go through two examples with you guys today. So here's our first one, and we are being asked to find the height of the tree. So if it helps you, I'm going to put a variable on the side length where our tree is located, and I could use x, but since we're talking height here, I'm going to use an h. Okay, so now we're looking at this example, and I like to think of our trigonometry examples in 3 steps. So our first step is to identify which side lengths we have information about. And when I say information, I mean either we know what its side length equals, or it's the side length that we're trying to find the length of. So that's basically where our variable is. So far in this example, we start with this side length of 125. Okay, so I notice that this is a side length that is right next to the angle that we're giving of 32 degrees. Okay, and we know that since it's one of the sides that makes up our right triangle, it has to be one of the legs. So the question becomes, well, which leg is it? Would it be the opposite leg or the adjacent leg? And since we've already established that it's the one that's next to the angle, we would call that the adjacent leg. So sometimes to make it easier on myself, I like to label what we have. So I have the adjacent leg, and then since h is the leg that's across the triangle from our angle of 32 degrees, that is what's known as the opposite leg. Okay, so here we have our opposite leg. Okay, so then we go back to our phrase SOHCAHTOA, or we think about our trig ratios, and we ask ourselves, well, which one compares the opposite leg to the adjacent leg? Or in SOHCAHTOA, where do you see O and A show up? It's with tangent, and tangent is set up as opposite leg over adjacent leg. So our next step is to set up that equation. So we're going to say, all right, tangent of our angle. Again, we know it's tangent because we're using opposite and adjacent. So tangent of our angle 32 is going to equal opposite over adjacent. So opposite was the height of the tree, so that's h. And we're going to divide that by the adjacent leg, which is 125. Okay, and that was step 2. Our third step now is to decide what we have to do to get the variable by itself. So in this example, since h is at the top of that fraction, okay, and h is being divided by 125, ask yourself, well, what's the opposite of dividing by 125? Oh, we're just going to multiply both sides by 125. Right, so the 125 that I multiplied by will cancel out the 125 on the bottom part of that fraction. So then we're going to get the equation 125 times tangent of 32 equals h. Okay, so now we're going to have our calculator do the work for us. So if you have a scientific calculator, you're going to type in as you see it. So 125 times, hit the tangent button, enter your angle measure of 32 and hit equals. If you're on your phone though, it is a little different. So first of all, you're going to want to open your calculator and then turn your phone to landscape mode, or turn it sideways. And we do that on the left hand side, you'll see 3 buttons. One says SIN, which is the abbreviation for sine. One says COS, which is the abbreviation for cosine. And one is TAN, which is the abbreviation for tangent. So to enter this equation into your phone calculator, you actually kind of enter it backwards. So we're going to first enter the angle of 32, then hit the tangent button, and then hit times 125. Okay? When you do that, you will get a height of 78.1. And this one, since we know our unit is feet, we'll label it as feet as well. Okay? Our second example we're going to do is this one right here. Okay, let's go through those same 3 steps as the last one. So first, let's identify what we have. So now I'm looking at, all right, well, here's my angle of 40, and I see that the length of 8 is the leg that's across the triangle from my 40. So therefore, that's what's known as the opposite leg. If you look at x, well, x isn't one of the legs because it's not one of the sides that make up that right angle. Instead, it's the side length that's across the triangle from our right angle. and that is always known as the hypotenuse. Okay, so the two lengths that we have here, we know the opposite leg is 8, and we're trying to solve for the hypotenuse. So go look at your, that phrase SOHCAHTOA, or look at what your notes on the trig functions and see which one compares the opposite leg to the hypotenuse, or which one uses opposite leg and hypotenuse. It's going to be our sine function. So we're going to say sine of our angle, so sine of 40 is going to always equal opposite over hypotenuse. In this case, 8 is the opposite leg, and x is the hypotenuse. So now this one's a little bit different than the last one. You notice in the last example we did, our variable was on the top part of the fraction, so we got it by itself by multiplying both sides by what was on the bottom. But in this one, you notice that x is on the bottom of that fraction. So I can't just multiply by 8 to get x by itself. Instead, though, we want to at least start by getting x out of the bottom part of our fraction. So we do that by multiplying both sides by x. So what that's going to do, or think of it as x over 1, right? That's going to cancel out the x from the bottom part of that fraction on the right-hand side. And now we'll get x times sine of 40 equals 8. Then I will get x by itself. Sine of 40 is really just a number. Okay, you can type in your calculator and figure out what number it is. But we can divide now by sine of 40 to get x by itself. Okay, so we left with, or my sine of 40 will cancel out. Now we get x is going to equal 8 divided by sine of 40. Okay, so before we type that into your calculator, I want you guys to compare the equation that we started with, so sine of 40 equals 8 over x, with when we got x by itself. X equals 8 over sine of 40. And what you guys might notice is really, through these steps, all that happens is that x and our sine of 40 kind of end up switching positions, right? They swap spots. I also sometimes call this in class the old switcheroo. So really, when x is on the bottom part of that fraction, we're just switching x with whatever our trig function on the left-hand side is. In this case, it was sine. It could be cosine. It could be tangent. Okay, but that's when x is on the bottom part of the fraction. So then let's go ahead and plug that into our calculator to figure out what x is going to be. So in your calculator, again, it's pretty straightforward. You just type in 8 divided by sine of 40. Okay, and on our phone calculator is a little bit trickier. What you're going to do again, you're going to open up your calculator app. You're going to turn your phone sideways so you can see all the buttons. So we're going to hit 8 divided by. So now we have to kind of enter this trig backwards. So we're going to hit 40, then hit the sine button, and then hit enter. Okay, when you do that, you get x is going to come out to equal, I get 12.4. Okay. So that's, everyone, how we solve for missing side length using trigonometry.